All right, so thanks so much for joining today. Today we'll be talking through cloud security monitoring and analytics using the Sumo Logic platform, and I'll kind of talk through the specifics of our product capabilities. I know we had some really interesting questions come in ahead of time as well that I think we'll be able to address today through the length of today's demo. So really excited to walk you through some of those details. We'll kick things off with a couple slides, but I do want to get into what I always consider to be the fun part, which is really showing you live in the platform, the actual kind of live dashboards, queries, alerts that really kind of drive a lot of these capabilities that I'll quickly kind of outline through some slides, and then we'll get into the fun part as I described. We'll definitely leave time at the end for Q&A. And just feel free to pop in Q&A, any questions that you have all throughout the whole length of today's demo, and then we'll make sure that we get to them most likely at the end, or maybe sometime throughout if it's kind of pertinent to the conversation at that time. So again, thanks so much for joining, and let's kind of dive in here. So just a couple of slides to kick things off, and then I'll take you to the platform. I just want to first kind of level set and describe the kind of more overarching Sumo Logic security intelligence solutions as it kind of stands. So we have these four columns here that I'll kind of describe, and then in the context of we'll be really digging into the second column for today's session. So in the broader sense, we have these kind of four overarching pieces that each have kind of a subset of product features that really help to drive towards a specific set of solutions for your teams. So on the left side, we have audit and compliance, which really helps you to really focus on compliance and posture management, and very much drive to a faster audit season cycle to be able to achieve your goals when you are focused on really making sure that audit teams have what they need in order to be able to ensure that you're hitting your compliance requirements as a team. So we actually have a dedicated session for that in the future, and have done some in the past as well. So no need to worry if that's something you want to focus more in. We'll have more content to come on that front. And that's really going to dovetail in with today's session, which is focused again on cloud security monitoring and analytics, which is really all about monitoring, detecting, search, and investigation for security incidents as they occur, with also the ability kind of layered in with that of threat benchmarking and analytics. So we'll get into a lot more today on that piece. In tomorrow's session, Cloud SIM, the third column, all about automatically triaging alerts, really being able to detect threats. You see some overlap here, but really a step towards more of an automation of triaging, and really helping to really perform the deeper threat hunting and investigations. So very much it's a dedicated session for that Dana Torgerson and team will be able to run with you tomorrow. And then last but very much not least would be Cloud SOAR, right? So really improving SOC efficiency with progressive automation, orchestration, really insightful decision making that can come from that. So all four of these kind of, again, come together onto this larger umbrella of security intelligence solution, the two on the left existing within our continuous intelligence platform. So just a quick note, as I said, on the platform itself. So we have, as a company, and within the platform, 2,100 plus customers today that are ingesting 27 exabytes of data that's all being scanned on a monthly basis. So really just a huge amount of data that's coming into the system, and that we're able to kind of scale up accordingly based on what our customer requirements are. A couple of kind of quick highlights here. We'll get into a lot of detail around the first two. I do want to call out kind of the cloud economics consumption model, since we won't be spending as much time on that today, but very much a flexible credits pricing model that allows you to essentially connect back what your specific use cases are, build around that, and then be able to attach those credits to whatever your use cases are for that day, week, or month accordingly. So don't feel like you are locked into any one of the kind of current scenarios or setups that you have the flexibility to adjust on the fly, which I think it can be really valuable for our customers. As I mentioned, we're going to really spend time on the second column here, which is cloud security monitoring and analytics. We'll get into detail around sort of what the difference is between security monitoring and security analytics, and also how they connect back up based on what your given use cases are. So a lot of the common challenges that we see today for a lot of our customers, and essentially what you would be able to most likely focus on if it's something you want to really address. And actually, I'm going to pause here, a quick Q&A. I saw it come in. So Jonathan Handler just asked, will we show what it would look like in an Azure AD environment instead of a hybrid AD environment or an AD environment? We won't get to that level of detail in today's session. I can definitely highlight an Azure dashboard for you, though. I'm happy to do that. We can get into a lot more detail separately and make sure we connect you with a sales team, but I definitely will show some Azure content through the length of today's presentation, as well as in the demo as well. So as I mentioned, really some core customer challenges that we see coming in very commonly would be kind of a lack of cloud support. So many tools still don't actively support the ingestion of cloud data to really generate those security insights. And then secondly, really limited visibility, where security insights are often limited in scope as far as what particular type of data source or insight that you have that's coming in. And thirdly, really limited analytics, where many analytics platforms are kind of designed for any number of use cases in a more vanilla sense, but don't go as specific into what a security engineering team would ideally want to focus on. So I want to talk more about kind of how Sumo helps to really improve security posture. And we'll show this throughout the length of the demo itself, as well as Sumo itself is cloud native. We're built on AWS from the start. And secondly, we really are, we give you the ability to really ingest a diverse array of firewall, database, identity access, and CDN data. So there's no limit to the types of cloud data you can bring in, but then secondly, we have the ability to really scale up quickly. Secondly, is kind of that versus that kind of limited visibility, we really allow for that more increased visibility by way of having the ability to drill into cloud and on-premise data and really go into the details through the scope of all of that firewall, database, identity access data, and many other types of data that we'll show in the demo. That really gives you that kind of more, that ability to really drill down or even back out and say, hey, I want to dig into a different data source based on these set of findings. And then thirdly, really security focused analytics. So analytics capabilities really designed specifically for security engineering teams to prioritize, investigate, respond, not to mention the Cloud SIEM and Cloud SOAR abilities that you can also kind of back out and even then pivot out into based on what those requirements are. And so as we kind of think about, actually, Nikem asked a really good question in the context of this, which is, does this allow for monitoring cloud security or hybrid on-prem cloud environments? So yes, the answer is yes. We're going to actually show, thinking out loud here, we're going to mostly show dashboards today that are just one or the other. So in other words, just focused on cloud security or focused on on-prem in one dashboard at the other, showing some examples of that. But you very much have the ability, and I'll show you that ability to kind of, you can grab any of these panels and place them into an existing cloud. So you could take the on-premise dashboard, and you could actually just grab one panel out of that and place that in a cloud dashboard, for example, and then you're just able to really get that view from one place. So I can actually show you in a very tactical sense, but the short answer is for sure that's a capability of our platform. And so as we kind of think about the cloud security monitoring and analytics overarching architecture, as I described, we really can cover a wide array of data sources, from whether it's an app that you as a company are building for your customers of external products, whether it's SaaS IT data, like maybe your Zscaler data or Zoom data, multi-cloud, which we actually just spoke about, right, is like maybe you have a scenario where you're utilizing both Azure and GCP, and in a certain environment, you want to get that kind of set of panels spun up into one dashboard, or on-premise data just in a more traditional sense. And then you're able to then ingest all of those data sources into the platform, and you have the ability to then look at it in a more overarching sense, really surface those critical security issues via dashboards and alerts. Or you want to go deeper once you have that kind of more overarching view, and then you can go and dig into those specific use cases that you know that you want to achieve. And then with that ability to monitor and analyze, generally more of a security analytics use case would be to go really granular and say, let's break that out by device, by IP. We have a set of filters you can assign at the top of your dashboards to then go and kind of pivot out the user level and network or database level. So very much a deeper technical capability that would align with security analytics scenarios. But even in the security monitoring environment, you might have a scenario where you want to kind of stay broader, but then also think about it at, say, the network level, like you already know which network to focus on, and then you want to drill in from there. So that kind of gives you the broader architecture sense. Just as we kind of dig in, I'm going to actually breeze through a lot of these next slides because I think we can better show it live, but I'm just going to quickly show you, this is the platform itself. This is an example of how you would look at all of your AWS data all together, kind of get that broader sense of what's going on in terms of user access or network traffic in this sense. As you kind of scroll through, you get a deeper sense, and then you can pivot out to each of those at the query level. But this is really focusing on again, on the process, investigation, and response piece. So primarily process and investigation is what we'll talk about today. There is the ability for response within the continuous intelligence platform, but then also that's something you can tackle within our Cloud SIEM or within our Cloud SOAR solution. So the kind of core features, we'll get into more detail today, but you can get into a lot of detail as you think about out-of-the-box app catalog content, subqueries, CrowdStrike threat, Intel built-in threat feed, as well as kind of raw text searching is really a core capability of Sumo from the very beginning. I mean, really kind of if you just wanted to do queries alone, you could do that within Sumo and really successfully kind of get into the details at the message level, which we'll show today as well, not just the visualizations. And looks like we had a chat come in. So as we think about prioritization of these threats, we'll be able to really generate those actionable insights by leveraging all of your on-premise hybrid cloud data. In this particular instance, we're just looking at cloud data again, but you could for sure just drop in a panel that's from on-premise data, and then be able to kind of have that broader view. And as we kind of do those deeper investigations, you can do that within a query, right? You can even do a sub-query that gets into much more detail and kind of pivots out and only addresses a subset of the data that is most interesting, and then kind of transpose that data into the rows that are most relevant. So all of this can be learned very readily, by the way, through our certifications and through our workshops. We have an education team that really focuses on giving you the ability to focus in and better understand your data. But I will say, if you know SQL, then for sure you'll pick it up quickly. And then acceleration of response as well. As I mentioned, you do have that capability within the continuous intelligence platform, but at the same time, that's something that you could leverage through Cloud SIEM or Cloud SOAR. And analysis of user activity. So I know there's a question around Azure that came in earlier. Azure Audit is actually highlighted here in the top right of a great example where you may already know, and you can set a filter here in this icon here to say, I want to just see this from the user level of how a particular user is operating within the subset of Azure audit data that's most relevant, and then kind of dig in from there, understand what the resource deletions or our resource creations are, better understand that user activity. So this is a quick sampling of kind of, actually, I'm gonna switch it up for today's session because we have a lot of new content that's come into the app catalog. it's really under the scope of new, quote unquote, new dashboards, which gives the ability to show metrics and kind of the traditional aspects of our data that have been available since day one, essentially at Sumo. So this is what I've often shown in the past, but I still think would be relevant for you to dig into potentially as an option, whether we're working within just our app catalog or with our professional services team. We showed a few times the AWS security overview, which I think is a good starting place. Vulnerabilities, of course, would be a really good starting place as well if you wanted to kind of have that bigger view of what's going on within your system. SOC KPIs for more of a security engineering management perspective of what's actually happening within your SOC, how do you track that accordingly, an investigation response, and even Azure Audit or Okta for kind of that more user activity level. So these are a few examples of things that you can look at. I'm gonna show you something very different for today's session, but I think it would be very relevant to think about as an option if you kind of want to go in each of these different directions, I think, according to what your use cases are. So with that, I'm actually going to jump into the platform. So let me just go back to full screen. And I'll give you a quick lay of the land here. So our app catalog is going to show you essentially what the core capabilities are in an overarching sense. So whether it's AWS, compliance, security, database, you can drill down according to what your needs are. Maybe it's even tracing, for example, that you want to have as a starting place. But each of these are these larger categories. We can look at AWS and say, focus on the fact that AWS is essentially something that you want to, continue to drill down on and have it like the service level, and be able to understand better what's going on within your system. Then you could use this as a starting place. CloudTrail data, for example, is something we can look at more closely and then be able to dig into. So all these are kind of out of the box, apps that are available within our app catalog, and give you really the ability to drill down quickly, better understand your system, and have an understanding of what's going on within it. Let's see, I'm actually gonna show just quickly lay of the land. So if you wanted to create like a log search, you want to look more closely at metrics or dashboards, you have all these options. As you kind of drill into each of them, you can better understand. Today, we'll mostly focus on dashboard as well as log search. And so I have a couple of dashboards that are already kind of loaded up that we can look at together. An example would be guard duty here, which is, again, this is part of what we've rolled out most recently as kind of our AWS focused set of apps within our app catalog. If you are an AWS shop, it's something you can really focus on. So if you were starting here, you would say, okay, because I am a customer of AWS and use guard duty very readily, I want to better understand kind of what all of the findings are within my system. So this is kind of the overarching view of each of these. And you say, okay, because of the fact that security monitoring dashboards kind of show me the larger findings, I see the general trend is, relatively flat, not a lot of anomalies here to track. But where it gets interesting, especially in light of kind of high severity findings, which are very much something you'd want to key in on based on that, we can say that, because of these pink triangles, which indicate that you're going outside of the expected range, which, by the way, you can tune if you want to have it be more sensitive or less sensitive, then these are going to indicate essentially that those are the outliers that we want to drill down on within that given time slice. And for each of these, I can open that into a search. And that's going to essentially show me, if I can just click out of this, that's going to show me the underlying, query that drives all this and the details of that. We can actually get even more granular into the message level, which would show to me, and I should mention too, the product will kind of guide you along as you do each of these. But each of these can be continuously, you can go deeper and deeper with each of these. So you can go down to the message level or the field level and say for each of these, you can actually assign like through field extraction rules. You can assign which of these fields you want to drill down into, or in this case, because we're looking at the JSON, we get a pretty good sense of what the whole message can tell us if we wanted to get that granular. But also it can be interesting to look at the aggregates, which is what's shown within the dashboard, in order to actually understand more deeply what's going on. And then, as I mentioned, and this kind of goes back to the question that came in, towards the beginning of today's session, which is that I can then assign this panel to a specific dashboard and say, this is something that I really wanted to assign to my Linux dashboard because I think it would be relevant to look at in that context. And then I could click add in that moment. The other thing I can do here is I can say, if I just pop open this panel here, I could say save as. And where that gets interesting is then if we want to kind of assign that as, as a search, actually, then I can schedule this and I can run it every 15 minutes, for example, if I don't need quite real-time data. And I can actually generate an alert from here, which I'm not going to do because it'll wake a lot of people up if I start assigning alerts from the demo account today. But this gives you a sense of the kind of granularity and the kind of conditions that you can set. Even if you want to have it be less or more sensitive, you can tune all this accordingly in order to assign an alert, whether it's to EML or to a webhook via Slack, etc. So that gives you a little sense of kind of the overview or the kind of more monitoring perspective. But then if we look at, we're still within kind of the guard duty context here. If we look at security analytics, more of a security analytics perspective, like I said, that allows you to drill down once you have that security monitoring overview. Within guard duty, we can say, what are the kind of the trend lines? And you already would know this from a security monitoring perspective, what's kind of going on within your system. But then I could say, based on that context, I want to actually drill down to a specific threat purpose. And in this case, we can see that it looks like based on this finding, recon is actually the most likely threat purpose, and not necessarily based on a trend line, but just the consistent, on a consistent basis that you can see that this is the most likely outcome. And then I can even drill down and say, if I decide that I actually want to focus on that, I could say, let's just only look at recon data to see if we can learn more at that point. And then that's when you kind of realize or better understand what's going on within recon data and drill down again. It's almost like without having to go down to the more specific query level, we just stay within the dashboard, but just get the core findings. So it's almost a halfway stepping stone between security monitoring and security analytics at that point. So just a quick time check. It looks like we have about 5 minutes left for today. So I'm actually going to run through like 1 or 2 more dashboards, but feel free, I'll just leave this time more as a Q&A, but if there aren't any questions, we'll just continue to run through additional dashboards. So I'll leave it as kind of flexible as if we want to spend this time as Q&A versus just continuing to run through some additional dashboards for more context. So for each of these, as you can see, I mean, we've kind of just covered and keyed in on guard duty as a kind of canonical example for today. Starting with security monitoring for guard duty or security analytics for guard duty, but we could do all the same for AWS firewall, or we could look at CloudTrail, VPC Flow, or Linux, or Palo Alto Windows, etc. I actually want to highlight, I'll just skip ahead to Linux, just because I think it would be good to have a little bit different view. I know a few questions came in actually around how do we talk about kind of potentially on-premise or like device level data, or just OS level data in general. And this is also like backing out of a more vendor specific view and saying what happens when you're dealing with kind of more open source data. So this is a little bit different angle on kind of the security monitoring overview perspective. Here we can see from a security engineering team perspective, some really relevant insights that would be a good kind of initial starting point. We can see the number of successful logins, failed logins, root login success. Again, relatively flat. We see a little bit of drop off, but that's to be expected because there's a little bit of time that's required for the data to actually come in. So you can actually even just remove that last bit of data from the query if you want to have more consistent baselines there. And we can say, okay, based on that, we're seeing, as expected, there are significantly more successful logins than failed logins. Number of accounts created versus accounts deleted. That may be something that's relevant or irrelevant, but we may find that essentially accounts deleted is an indicator that we're just spinning up a lot of new resources a lot that are very temporary, in which case that might just be expected behavior and we'll be kind of comfortable with that. But at the same time, if we go a little bit deeper, I think one little different perspective on that would be, okay, based on that, we don't see anything too unexpected. Then we could also say, as we look at this more kind of digging into the threat intelligence feed, we see security analytics dashboard for AWS WAF. Oh, sorry, let's actually look at Linux here. Yeah, so if we look at the security monitoring dashboard for threat log broken down by severity, and I just want to highlight the geolocation option, we might see that in this particular instance, we didn't expect to see traffic, for example, from a given region, in which case we may want to actually dig into that, better understand why that's the case. And then we can confirm actually, and we're kind of at time here, but I just want to quickly highlight that you could then confirm based on user activity and based on a set of variables. You can set up the template variables and say, okay, actually, it is understood that a given employee or user was operating in a certain region, and that was to be expected over that timeline, kind of confirmed based on your understanding of that environment. So we do have customers that have kind of surfaced some really interesting insights kind of through that geolocation feature and been able to kind of better understand via that. I also want to quickly highlight the honeycomb feature, which allows you to actually break down and just kind of hover over each of these and give a better sense of like destination IP and the number of instances for that, like 51 instances in this case will indicate that it's a little bit of a higher hotspot. We had a question come in that says, how can I check which are the upcoming applications supported by the Apache superset team? Is that, so just to clarify on that, Parvati, are you asking like what our plans are to support Apache data sources for like timelines coming up? Or if so, we generally will not necessarily like tease out our product roadmap much more than like a couple of weeks in advance. Maybe we'll highlight a couple of things that are coming up, but I can absolutely just like on a one-off basis, if you want to just ping me, and I can just give you my email actually. If you want to just ping me, I mean, we can dig into what you're working on and you can let me know specifically like which type of Apache data you're looking to kind of sift through. And I can give you a sense of kind of what the expectations are around that. I can also let you know like what we're working on today, just depending on each of that. But yeah, I mean, I can even show you like we're at time now, but I can quickly show you what we have today. So we have Apache Tomcat, and then global intelligence for each of them. This is kind of the broader look at Apache, which gives you kind of more of an overview, and you can preview that dashboard here. This would give you, I mean, Apache obviously is a very broad set of data, so it would depend a little bit on what you're looking to dig into, but a lot of details can be found here, and I would kind of use that as a starting point, and then we can dig in deeper. Awesome, thanks Parvati. And then we had a question. I know we're at time here, so feel free to call it here if you have to jump into your next meeting. We had a question come in about Confluence. I know Confluence has been done as more of like on a one-off basis, so there's no reason why you couldn't send data in through syslog, for example. And then you could essentially do that as more of a custom dashboard, which I've been more speaking about out of the box content. But no, we don't explicitly have it in the app catalog as of yet. And then Mattermost, kind of the same story. We can do that as a custom dashboard, and there's no reason why you couldn't do that via, most likely through syslog would be the most common scenario. And then you could kind of build out field extraction rules and build accordingly. So awesome. So I know we're 1 minute over. Really appreciate folks for joining. It looks like we had a great set of attendees, and I think had some really interesting questions come in. Let me actually just quickly reshare my screen so that I can share some resources that I think would be valuable. I know a few things were added to the chat as well, but I would just say these links would be a good starting place. Even if you just Google Sumo Logic Security Analytics Overview, it'll take you straight there. Let me actually just pop, probably the hardest one to do manually. Well, I'll just add all of these to the chat quickly. And then the next piece would be, if you wanted to get started today and or it sounds like a lot of folks are already familiar with Sumo, but if not, you can get started the free trial at sumologic.com/sign-up. And that gives you the opportunity to try all this live and really get live. Everything I showed you today, you can do on your own as well. So I think that'd be a good opportunity to really dig in. And just going back to this, I'll kind of end on this slide, but security analytics overview demo video. So kind of a very condensed form of what I showed today is that YouTube link. Security intelligence shows you the overarching kind of broader set of solutions, which we'll also get into future. We'll get into the Cloud SIEM piece tomorrow as well. Security analytics brief, if you prefer kind of more of a condensed format written out. And then the Sumo Dojo Slack, if you have live questions. A lot of the good questions that came in today can also, like those types of questions can be asked within the Slack as well. So I think that'd be a good starting place to kind of dig in. So with that, I will end here. Thanks so much for joining today, and we'll see you in a future session. Have a good rest of the day.